Hi everyone, this is Neel Raithatha here, also known as the Wax Whisperer. Thank you for joining me in my latest video. I have here a compilation video consisting of 4 patients. This is patient 1, and patient 1 attended with bilateral, fully occluding, very dark, soft, mushy earwax. This is probably the most frustrating type of earwax to remove because of its consistency. Because it's so soft and mushy, it doesn't come out in big chunks normally, and quite often it can block the inside of the suction tube. So I've just put a squirt of medical grade olive oil spray in there just to change the consistency ever so slightly. And what I want the oil to do is bind this wax together so it can come out in a bigger piece, a bigger chunk. And I'm just very gently maneuvering this wax. You can see it at the bottom of the ear canal that I'm raising it off the floor, off the canal, and it's just lodged up against the eardrum. About 1/2 centimetre away from the eardrum, we have a region of the ear called the isthmus, and that's when the ear narrows and widens again. And this wax plug is lodged beyond the narrowing, so I have to coax it out. And I've just separated it from the roof of the ear canal, and very slowly but surely I'm coming away with the wax plug. And it's near the entrance now, I'm just got to wriggle it through. And that's the power of using olive oil spray during an earwax removal procedure. It can really help quicken the procedure, make it more comfortable for the patient. And as you can see, it works a treat. Lovely healthy eardrum. This patient has got quite a bendy ear canal, and I'm just noticing that more in reflection here. So we're just going to mop up the back part of the ear canal. So the endoscope's actually angled directly into the ear canal, and it's in that orientation you can't actually visualize the eardrum, you can just visualize the back part of the ear canal. So we go past the second bend to the left, so that cartilage to the left, that's the second bend, and the eardrums veers off, it chicanes off to the left. I've just attached a fine end suction probe. I'm just hovering over this soft sticky wax. We're on the border of the cartilage and bony part of the ear canal, and we've got to be careful for that reason, because the bony part of the ear canal is extremely sensitive. If we apply too much pressure, it'll be uncomfortable for the patient. The outer third, the cartilage portion, is slightly different. It's malleable, it's flexible, it's got a thick layer of skin as well, much thicker than the skin that lines the bony part of the ear canal, so it's less sensitive. Is this going to massively improve the patient's hearing? Probably not, but I'm just hovering over, and anything comes away, we'll get it out for the patient. And where I am now, the piece of cartilage there, this is the second bend. You can see the eardrum is hidden, it's tucked behind that second bend. It really does veer off to the left. And because I put a lot of drops in, it's just mopping up some of the oil. Lovely healthy eardrum, got a good light reflex. Same patient, but this is their right ear, similar consistency of wax. Again, they got a bendy ear canal. So I'm just using the tip of the endoscope to stretch open and widen the ear canal entrance. You're almost using the endoscope tip like a crowbar. We're trying to stretch, straighten and widen the ear canal entrance, which then allows me to insert the suction tube into the ear. And once more, I have put a bit of olive oil. I don't want it to use too much because the patient has already inserted quite a lot of drops prior to attending, and that's in part why it's become so mushy. So you can see that oil now. And I'm actually performing microsuction whilst the oil is in situ. When I first started using oil, I would initially and originally get the patient just to tilt their head over to the side. So with this being the right ear, I'll get them to tilt their head over towards their left shoulder. So this ear is facing towards the ceiling. I'd put the drops in, I'd let it work its magic for a few minutes, let it soak, and then I would ask the patient to tilt the head in the opposite direction, so towards their right shoulder, and I'll place a tissue underneath the ear to collect all the oil as it's draining. But more and more I've used oil. I prefer now to use the oil whilst, to perform microsuction whilst the oil's in situ. So in this case, I'll be standing up, looking down into the ear and vacuuming whilst the oil's in. I find it to be a lot more effective. The major challenge though is when you're performing microsuction whilst the oil is actually still in the ear. You can get a lot of blurring on the screen, so you're just going to be a bit careful, but the more and more you do it, you become more comfortable with the technique. Now I know some of you are going to really not be pleased with me, because there you'll see in a moment there's a strand of hair that's stuck at the roof of the ear canal, and it's all the way to the front part of the eardrum. It's not in contact with the eardrum, but there's nothing for me to grab onto there, so I couldn't use a forceps to remove that, for example, because it is literally against the surface. Using a sucker, again, you're going to be grazing the ear canal. So I've got loads of hairs in my ears myself that are loose. Then it caused me a problem. I did ask the patient whether they could feel anything in their ear, and they said no, it's fine. So hopefully that hair over time, as that skin dies and sheds and migrates, it'll work itself out. But it's non-symptomatic for the patient, it's non-problematic, so we just leave that. This is patient 2. So patient 2, their wax, you can see it's completely different. And in fact, this has got a lot of dead skin keratin. There is a lot of hairs there as well. So I'm just trying to tease this out. I've managed to get a good suction grip. Quite often, harder, firmer wax is a lot easier. It's quite a substantial piece to remove compared to softer wax, because as long as you get a good suction grip, you can remove the wax in its entirety. The softer it is, the more likely it is to come out in little chunks and break away. So I've removed the ball of keratin. Now I'm just going to perform a skin peel, I think. I'm going to just remove some of this dead skin that's coating the base of the ear canal. I've reverted to the fine end. The fine end suction probe, it's actually an extension. So I'm still using the standard size Zollner suction probe. That's got an internal diameter of probably about 1.7 millimeters, and I've attached this fine end gauge 18. I think the internal diameter is 1.2, and you actually almost like I don't know, in the States where you play snooker there. I know pool's quite popular, but so it's like billiards in the UK. We call it snooker, and it's a big table, and if you're struggling to lean over to the table to hit the cue ball, you add an extension to your cue. And I compare the fine end to an extension. We actually clip it on at the tip of the suction probe, so it makes the suction tube a lot longer. And with the fine end, because it's got a narrower internal diameter, there's less suction power, and also it's less noisy. Now, when I say less suction power, I have to be careful with that, because I'm not sure that's quite correct. Because it's also got a smaller surface area. If you that suction power, it's probably less overall, but it's more concentrated. And for that reason, if you're being quite localized in what you're trying to remove, it probably has a bit more gravitas than a full suction probe, because although it's less power, it's more concentrated because of a smaller internal diameter, smaller surface area. The main thing with the fine end that I enjoy using it for is procedures like this, when you're performing a delicate skin peel, because you have a lot more precision with the tip of the sucker being narrower. And this skin is quite thick, and I'm just really leveraging it up. Okay, it's quite a thick blanket, it's really strongly adhered, and I was having to really work at the skin. Sometimes skin peels away so easily, sometimes you have to put a bit more force behind it. This is that isthmus which I mentioned in patient 1. You can see the ear canal narrows, then it widens again, so the skin is slightly lodged there. I think I managed to peel it away, we shall see. You can sometimes use a bit of oil as well to soften the skin. This patient was wearing hearing aids upon attending, so I was going to avoid using the oil wherever possible, because as soon as they put the hearing aid in, it can get really oily and greasy, and it can block the hearing aid. And you can see we managed to remove that without any oil. This is the same patient. This is their right ear. So again, a lot of dead skin as opposed to earwax. Now, earwax is actually made up of dead skin. Typically around 60% of earwax is made up of dead skin. Now, you can get dry earwax, and dry earwax simply has a high concentration of dead skin, dead keratin. There's typically 2 types of wax. You can get wet type of wax, and you can get a dry type of wax. The type of wax you have is not completely regulated by genetics, but genetics has a big factor. There's a particular gene called the ABCC11 gene, and that gene is responsible for the transportation of certain molecules across cell membranes, and also within a cell, membranes within a cell, so intracellular membranes. And more specifically, it helps to transport odorous molecules within the ceremonous glands. The ceremonous glands are a particular gland that are found in our ears and also inside the groin and your armpits. I'll come back to that in a moment. So you can see I've cleared that ear. There's just a flock of hairs. So I'm just going to remove that with a fine end. And a functional ABCC11 gene has at least one dominant guanine allele. So if you're into your DNA and your different nucleotides, so it has a dominant guanine allele. But there is a mutation to that gene, and that's where you have two recessive adenine alleles. So two homozygous adenine alleles. And if you have that specific gene mutation, it actually renders that ABCC11 gene as redundant. It stops its function. So it doesn't transport these certain molecules, that odorous molecules, within the ceremonous glands. And so imagine you do have a functioning ABCC11 gene. It transports these molecules, which then form and combine odorous molecules, either without interference in the bacterium. Now, sometimes these molecules, when they are secreted by the ceremonous glands and they reach the surface, they then interact with the bacteria, the skin flora. And once the bacteria feed on these secretions, then it lets off an odor. And so if you've got a functioning ABCC11 gene, it means that your ear produces these molecules that are either odorous from origin or after they interact with bacteria at the surface of the skin flora. And if you have a non-functioning ABCC11 gene, these molecules that then are either odorous from origin or then become odorous later after interacting with bacteria, they're not secreted by the ceremonous glands. And those molecules are also quite viscous. So if you have these molecules, not only does it cause an acidic smell in your ear and also in your armpits that some people can find offensive, because you've got this that particular secretions are quite viscous, it makes the earwax more wetter. And on the contrary, when you don't have these molecules be secreted, you don't have that same odor originating from within your ears and your armpits, and your wax is drier because you've got less watery secretions being emitted by the ceremonous gland. So doing a lot more research about that recently, so I'm just doing a manual on earwax, so I've been reading a lot more on that, so I hope you found that interesting. You saw patient 3 and 4 there. Sorry, I got distracted. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video, guys. Take care, keep well, and speak soon. Bye.